Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Payoff.
Icon versus icon. This is Tom Healy, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jeffrey Ryan. Jeff, somehow 28 episodes into the Payoff, and it's only the second Hulkster match we've covered. Can you hear the excitement in my voice?
Yeah, for you and me too, especially growing up Hulkamaniacs and being a fan of eating our vitamins and saying our prayers and all that good stuff. Like, it is surprising that this is only the second time we're talking about him, but we are here now, and of course the Brahma Bull, the Rock as well too, and so this should be exciting though. So of course, welcome, listening to the show. Appreciate everybody being here. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you can. Give us those 5 stars, and of course, spread the word about the show. You know where we're at on social media, but at Payoff Pod. We're going to get right into this one. So, Tom, let's just jump right in, man.
Yeah, and as always, make sure to check out our previous shows in the archives. Got some really good ones. Jeff, put you on the spot here. What's your favorite episode that we've ever done?
Oh, for you and me, I've always said I really appreciate all the ECW stuff, and so I'd have to say any of the ECW stuff isn't really good, but especially I'm going to point to the Shane Douglas match right out of the gate, and throwing down of the championship belt. I think we've had a lot of people talk to us about that one, that they feel like not a lot of people have done episodes or talked about that one. So that one I've always really enjoyed. That one we had a lot of fun doing that episode too.
Yeah, that was a good one. That might have been the best one. I thought Hogan Warrior was pretty awesome. More recently, the Marrow Sable was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I would also put up there the Streak is Over episode. Just a lot of stuff happening in that. Great match. I really like that one too.
Yeah, all those are really good, and you and I both Undertaker marks as well, and so that one too. Rough one for you and me to go back and enjoy, I guess, or rewatch, but it was worth it though to have the conversation.
Yeah. So Hogan Rock. Obviously, I am a major Hulk Hogan mark, big time Hulkster. I may have mentioned this on a previous episode. I've done meet and greets with most of my childhood heroes, certainly of those that are still with us. There's only one where my heart was pounding and I was super excited and nervous for, and it was me and the Hulkster. It's the only one. Like HBK, I mean, it's probably my all-time favorite. I mean, I was like, cool, what's up, man? Like, loved your shit, but Hogan, man, it was just something about him, just larger than life, watching him as a child, whatever it might be, but I was pumped, and maybe I'll post it this week, but the Hulkster and I actually cut a promo on my, at the time, fiance, who is now my wife, that was not there, and so that was pretty awesome, and you could see the excitement in my eyes. So I'm pumped to cover this because I love Hogan. Let me throw something else at you, and we'll discuss this throughout and afterwards. Maybe we're covering the best Rock match of all time, perhaps. And then, obviously, the crowd reactions to this, the way that they kind of transformed as the match went on, just an awesome one. So I'm pumped to cover it for those reasons. What about you?
Yeah, I think this is one of those where, it's billed, and you said it in the opening, icon versus icon. I think that this match, it made a little bit more sense than what we may be used to. You bring back people, like at least these guys were a little bit more in their prime compared to, some other people coming back that are a little out of their prime. I think I've started developing a reputation here for not being a Goldberg fan. And so, bringing Goldberg back to kind of wrestle some of his matches and watch those, it's just a struggle sometimes. So, but this one, these guys, looking their best, putting on a good show, playing to the crowd. We're going to talk about that too. Really feeding off that energy. They knew what they were doing.
All right, so I guess kick us into the build and we'll get started.
Oh, it's time for the build.
Yeah, so discussing the build a little bit here. What happened is you had Vince actually bringing back Hogan, Hall, and Nash, the original NWO as we all know them. Vince did not want to share power with who was the kayfabe owner at the time, Ric Flair. This was kind of after some of the breakings ups and things like that.
Yeah, because they brought Flair back originally he came back, I want to say it was in the fall, maybe right around Survivor Series, and he was like the new owner, and they brought him in with no expectation of wrestling, and then he was in a bloodbath against Vince McMahon at the Royal Rumble. So that didn't last too long.
And what it really boiled down to was Vince actually had just acquired the rights to a lot more of the WCW, like the video library, some more naming rights. And so he was able to do a few things that he wasn't able to do in the original Invasion angle. So a couple parts of this, you actually have Stone Cold and The Rock both being involved in this. You'll kind of see there were on this card, and Tom will talk about, there were some different matches here that involved both those guys, but both guys really battling the NWO. It started with The Rock and Hogan. Hogan wanted a photo of The Rock for his son.
Oh, that's right.
It was a whole thing. The Rock said no. So, of course, the next night you've got, it played out just like normal, interrupting promos. Hogan, tried to shake hands with The Rock, took a rock bottom instead when, The Rock, the classic wrestling, like holding the hand too long before he gives him the move. And so after the handshake.
When that promo, we can talk more about this later, but that promo was one of the first, I'm going to call your ass out for a WrestleMania match.
Yes.
It's become more famous. You think of like the, Lesnar Taker, you think a Triple H Taker, like some of those big Taker matches.
Yep.
Obviously Rock Cena, right? Like some of those where it was like me and you, dude,
Yep.
That was, probably one of the first, like, me versus you, WrestleMania, point to the sign, like, let's do it, brother, type dream mega matches, right? That didn't happen organically because someone won the Royal Rumble or something like that. That's got to be one of the first that I can think of, which was really cool. Like mega WrestleMania matches that got built that way.
Absolutely. And this was kind of after like the rock bottom. If a lot of us remember the kind of iconic painting of the NWO. It was actually Hall and Nash who came down for the save, and their spray painting of the NWO. Both Stone Cold and The Rock ended up having to deal with this. And so Austin kind of had the back and forth a little bit too with these different guys with getting attacked, different things like that happening. Austin trying to run over with his pickup truck. Of course, little manslaughter always goes a long way in or vehicular manslaughter goes a long way in a wrestling storyline. And so who doesn't love that? And so also this is, of course, a lot of spray paint in this storyline, the spray painting of the what on the limousine. And so can't forget that as well too. And so it's just one of those things that, a lot of different angles that this was coming at, but really, you had Hogan and The Rock and that story being built. You had kind of Nash and Hall and Austin and that story being built as well, too. And so we get that. It was actually Austin who stopped a attack against The Rock when he was kind of getting hit with getting beat up, hit with a steel chair, things were happening. And so there was a really weekly build for this one between all five of these men, if you will, the NWO, the three, and then you got Rock and Austin. And so, but there was really the week before we takes us right into WrestleMania. And so that's how we got to this one. So Tom, what other thoughts do you have on kind of how we got here or anything else?
Yeah, so WrestleMania X8, WrestleMania 18, coming off of arguably the greatest WrestleMania of all time, even to this day, which was WrestleMania 17. So, in terms of that, some pretty big shoes to fill. We're at the Sky Dome in Toronto, so big venue. ironically, remember we were in arenas. We started off in an arena. We ended up in some big venues. We went back to arenas. We're in big venues. There'd still be some after this. 19 obviously was at Safeco, 20 at the Garden, 21 Hollywood, I believe. Then we had Chicago, 22, and then 23 back in Detroit, and then I think it's all been a stadium since then. But this one was at the Skydome, 68,000. The big tagline for this event was that icon versus icon, Rock versus Hogan. Going into the show, speculation from Wade Keller around what the main event would be, saying, hey, it could be Hall and Austin, but probably not. It could be Rock Hogan, or it could be the title match. He thought it would be Rock Hogan. 2020 hindsight, that obviously should have been the main event. So, big card. We won't go through all of it, but I'll just tell you that, one of the forgotten matches on this show, as soon as I saw it, I remembered, but Undertaker and Ric Flair had an awesome match. You have to remember, this is a Ric Flair who didn't know if he wanted to get back in the ring, didn't want to embarrass himself. Of course, when Vince is like, hey, we're going to do a street fight at the Rumble. All right. So he does that. It went well. Next thing you know, he's wrestling. And again, this Undertaker-Flair match was excellent. And I actually think it might be, not like it's the number one Flair match we need to cover on this show, but it's something that we may want to cover. So, that was on the undercard. Again, that Steve Austin-Scott Hall match that it was just a dud, right? Not a lot of build to it, nothing significant about it. And then ultimately, the big disappointment, which we'll talk more about during this match, which is why in the hell wasn't it Steve Austin versus Hulk Hogan, right? Third to last match on the show is the one we're covering, Rock Hogan. Then we had, and I don't say this to offend anyone, but it was the women's buffer match, right? That's what it was at the time. This women's championship, Divas championship, for so many years was, let's put that on before the main event, like in between the second biggest and biggest men's match, so that people can go to the bathroom and the crowd can cool off before the main event. So, we had Jazz defeating Lita and Trish Stratus in a 3-way 6-minute match. Again, kind of a blow-off match. And then the main event of Triple H and Chris Jericho. Good luck following Hogan Rock. They obviously didn't, and really just a weak way to end a pretty good WrestleMania. So, the only other thing I'll add is, leading up to this, I thought was interesting was this was right around the time, or this is the last WrestleMania that was WWF, right? And Jeff, do you remember the ad campaign when they switched from WWF to WWE?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Get the F out.
Yep.
It was actually pretty effective. It was like, it's clever, and it didn't kind of skip a beat. But what a stupid way to lose that WWF name. And for those that don't know, there was the World Wildlife Fund, who, for to shorten things, went by WWF, and then of course the World Wrestling Federation. The only reason that there was a clause or an agreement between the two, but when they made this agreement, and this was like in the 80s, I believe, they said, if there's ever something on the internet, which didn't even really kind of exist then the WWF, World Wildlife Fund, was able to use it. So they had this agreement. So when the time came where it was like, oh, the AOL and the internet, and well, yeah, you're not allowed to use that on here. So that's why they had to change it, and then the logo and all this stuff. But it was kind of a one-sentence clause in something where they had an agreement. So, that's it. Jeff, you walked us through things from a storyline standpoint. We'll get more into it, but I want to jump right into the payoff. For those that want to watch this with Jeff and I, the 2-hour 25-minute and 30-second mark is where we're watching this on the WWE Network. This is where they show the build for the match. So we'll talk through some of that, and then the entrances and the match, and obviously what took place afterwards. So again, if you want to watch this with us, 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 30 seconds, WrestleMania 18 on the WWE Network. So Jeff, with that being said, let's get to the payoff.
Ho! It's time for the payoff.
All right, so Jeff, here we are. Rock, Hogan,
Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Hollywood Hulk Hogan brought him back. But, that's what's funny is, and they're showing the, the two guys, they're about to show the build to this. It's a long graphic. 2020 hindsight booking, do you bring him back at this time as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, part of the NWO, or would you have brought him back yellow and red?
And they're showing the yellow and red right now. I feel like they did this right because then, they really played off the crowd and kind of let the crowd dictate what they were going to want to see. And so I think they did a good job here of they incorporating, we can see some of this into, him being the Hulkamaniac versus Hollywood. And so I think they were, I don't think it really mattered how they brought him back. I think it's more important that they listened to the reactions, saw how the fans were treating it, and acted accordingly. And I think that was the smart way to go with this.
Oh, there's absolutely no question. And I think you had to bring him back as a bad guy to, let the fans turn him. There was an old adage in the business of, the best good guys were bad guys that turned, right? And you think of The Rock and you think of Stone Cold. And, a lot of times that's how you get the best good guys is their heels and then the fans turn them over time.
Yeah. So I'll start my first question on this one is you and we touched on a little bit and the card layout on this one.
Yeah.
We can debate whether or not Austin should have been in this match later because I know we've got that kind of question we want to ask. But the layout of this match, we're looking at it 11 matches, 12 if you kind of count some pre-game stuff, pre-show stuff.
Well, now it's 20?
Right, yeah, it's closer to 20.
This is a short card compared to now.
But looking at it, Stone Cold versus Hall was in the middle of the card. It was technically match 8. Here's that rock bottom we were talking about. And so we're watching this opening promo still. So, but
how about main eventing one more WrestleMania,
right?
With The Rock.
Yep.
That was a great promo.
Hitting him with the strap. There. Yep. So, but I think this is one I think there's some websites out there that predict the match order and kind of what we're gonna get. But looking at it, I'd say these last few matches because then after this, oddly enough, and we talked it was Billy and Chuck defeating the APA, the Dudley Boys, and the Hardy Boys.
That was the match before this.
That was the match before that. So, at home, those of you at home, it was the Stone Cold match, and then you had this 4-way elimination match. Then you had the match we're about to watch, and then it's Tom said yes, it was the bathroom match. Yeah, that was how it was at the time. It was the women's match, and then you get Triple H and Jericho. So these two icons really of this one, and I say 3 really with Austin too. What are your was this laid out right? How would you have laid this out?
The show?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was one of this is the one that really sparked a couple discussions, right? One discussion was is the world title, and remember there was only one world title at this point, but is the world title match, should that always be the main event?
Right.
So that was the question, right? And so that was why they went with the world title as the main event in this show, because that was still the thinking of that. But then this was the one that really got the conversation going of, hey, maybe sometimes it should be the biggest match and not. Now, obviously, over the years, it's changed, right? There's times where the world title has ended. There's times where it hasn't. Now you have the women sometimes ending, or the men, or the SmackDown world title, or the Raw world title. So it's gotten jumbled up. But this was the first time where the conversation was, wait a second here. Should we end with the world title, or should we end with the biggest, best match? And it started to change the thinking in future years, obviously.
Can I just point out? Can I just stop?
Yeah.
The black and white entrance here, black
and white,
classic
screen, black and white NWO. Obviously the fans going nuts for the guy. We got so many things to talk about. I will say a knock on this is it was slightly anticlimactic in the sense of Hogan already wrestled. There was at least one match that he wrestled, which was on Raw, and it involved Rock Austin against the NWO, and it was just all that, like, Austin and Rock getting in the ring together. I'm sorry, Hogan and Rock, Hogan and Austin, all those dream matchups. They kind of just did it as a thrown together main event of Raw. I don't know if it was the week of this show. It might have been, but it was in the lead up to it. So that was just a little bit frustrating, but I'm nitpicking a little bit. So again, there's a lot to unpack here because, you have the biggest match on the show, arguably, that was not the main event. Now, that being said, going into this show, you knew this was going to be a good match. There was a lot of build to it, but we had no idea that it was going to be this great of a match. So 2020 hindsight, you would have ended with this, but people just didn't know. And hell, you could have ended the show with Hogan posing or Hogan and Rock posing.
For those of you not watching, too, a lot of crowd or signs in the crowd. This was the golden age of signs in the crowd, and like a lot of anti-Hogan signs, like "gonna take a rock bottom," like all that kinds of stuff. And so, which is just kind of you don't see that as much anymore, but it's still good stuff. But,
so getting back to the card. So the other thing is that then what's your school of thought? Let's just say that we agree that the top 3 matches on this card were, Triple H and Jericho for the world title, Hogan versus Rock, and then Austin versus Hall, and we'll say Taker versus Flair is the 4th one. So those were your, no question, those are your 4 biggest matches on this show. So then the question becomes, are those 4 big matches, are those your final 4 matches as you're booking a card, or do you space it out? Because more recently, the thinking amongst, the WWF, WWE has been, let's put these sporadically throughout. So I think that in some years they've almost said, hey, we're going to have 3 main events. We're going to have an hour. Each hour has kind of a main event where you might get, a Lesnar match at hour 1, you get the Taker match at hour 2, you get the world title match hour 3, and so there's really 3 main matches. I mean, even last year, Batista, Triple H, I mean, it was kind of in the middle of the show. Sting, Triple H, middle of the show. Lesnar, Taker, middle of the show. So the question, I guess, is if you're booking cards, do you have a general rule of thumb where you say, hey, give me my 4 biggest matches, the final 4, or do you like them spaced out?
Yeah, and I think it's got to be because I think you touched on last year was one of those, like, I think it was the Triple H Batista match that really took the wind out of everything. I don't think with this match you could have predicted that it was going to play out like it did. Like, the fans are going ape shit right now, and so chanting for everybody. And so I think this is one of those where the fans dictated how this was going to play out. And so, and like same with last year, like that Triple H match was almost like 25 minutes or so. So like, a lot of people said like the women's match kind of capping things off wasn't super well received. I don't know if that was because of how the card was laid out or if fans had been there or sat through what felt like 11 hours of wrestling at that point.
So to me, it's a lot more, and I love seeing these guys face off. I love it. It was, sometimes there's just chemistry, right? Like there's certain guys where, looking in the eyes, like just standing there, I mean, the place is going nuts. These guys had it, man. And there was just something about these two.
I like the "Hey Hogan 1983" called sign.
Yep,
I thought that was a good one.
So they're going nuts. They don't even have to say a word. They don't even have to lock up. I mean, they're just standing there. The place is going absolutely crazy. They didn't anticipate this. I mean, and Toronto was just Hogan country. I mean, this might have been his number 1 city in a lot of ways. I mean, going nuts. So as they get ready to lock up, that's the other thing too. Is you're talking about some of these long WrestleMania cards now. There's dead matches.
Yeah.
And you don't really, I mean, I'd say Kofi and Daniel Bryan just kind of was a little flat in the middle of it. I remember that Bray Randy match. I mean, and I was there for that one. Nothing. I mean, the crowd was dead. So sometimes you get these matches that, just because of the spot of the card or whatever, I mean, God, they're just going nuts.
Look how crazy. They're on their feet. After one move, they're on their feet. They're going insane. Yeah.
This is one of the best crowds for a match I can ever remember.
Yeah, really good.
So sometimes they're just dead. And that's where, you could argue the second best spot on a WrestleMania main event or a WrestleMania card in this day and age is the opener. Think about that AJ Styles Shane McMahon match. It was the first match. They had 25 minutes or whatever they had, and they had a great match. And you're going to have a fresh, a fresh crowd then.
Well, and I think like how they lay the cards out now, because it was last year too, where Brock came out and said, "We're doing this now."
Yeah, that's right.
And so he came out and said, it was Heyman that came out and he blew past Hogan actually. And like, they didn't even know, the rumors said that Hogan didn't even know what was happening. And so, but Heyman blew past him and said, screw it, we're doing this match now. And so I think that it's just weird for me because I know like, and I watch more New Japan than you do. Like we know what like the final matches are going to be months in advance. And so I kind of like knowing that, but like with something like this, like we might still be getting a build in the weeks leading up, or reading the kind of dirt sheets nowadays, like we don't know, or they're saying like the WrestleMania plans are more up in the air than ever, which they're starting to come together. We can see some things. I think Super Showdown kind of screws everything up a little bit too, because you got to count it as the glorified house show that it is. But I think like laying out, it's got to be tough because you never know like. I think it speaks to how much they're not listening to the fans and like not knowing how to lay it out as well as it can. Because
do you prefer the Super Showdown that they're doing in Saudi Arabia? Do you prefer it to be before or after WrestleMania? I mean, if we're going to get it and it's going to happen, do you want it before or after WrestleMania?
I wish it was after, to give you the blunt answer. I think though that overall, Rocky, just yes. That I think that they need to do a better job of selling that like event. Is not like it doesn't fall into the continuity of everything else. It doesn't have to. Like you can do almost like some Survivor Series type stuff where you get to see some matches you don't normally see, and maybe that's Super Showdown, and they sell it that way where it doesn't like house shows. What happens at house shows doesn't always count. Like what happens at that show doesn't always count. Now, like it's tough because it's on the network and. Then we see clips and all these other things, and you never know what's going to happen. But I would prefer that it be after, and it's treated as that pay-per-view. Hogan, not getting over the rope there, Hogan. That looked rough, but so I would say after. What do you think?
Completely disagreed. So I like it happening before, like they're doing this year. So let whatever happen, and use it as a build to WrestleMania. It pissed me off, and I think it's happened twice now, where we get WrestleMania, right? And some of us, we attend WrestleMania or, we watch it, we get really excited about it. And then, 3 weeks later or a month later, it's like, it's the biggest show ever. It's the biggest main event ever. And you'll have, a Goldberg or, some of these guys come back and you're like, wait a second here. Like I just, and again, I know it's not the pay-per-view era where we're spending $60, but I just invested 8 hours of my life or a weekend of my life to go to the place to get all excited about WrestleMania. And now you're saying this show's bigger and better and all this stuff. And it pisses me off.
Yeah, and we still have and then with Super Showdown, we actually have another pay-per-view after that with Elimination Chamber. And so I feel like, yes, the bloat of like how many pay-per-views we have to deal with or network events, whatever you want to call it.
See, and I don't mind the Elimination Chamber, the way they've set it up. And the reason I say that is because, theoretically, one world title is going to be determined for the men and the women is going to be determined at Royal Rumble, which is great. There's stakes and it builds it up. Fantastic. The other one, hey, you put 6 top contenders in there and anything can happen. Like Kofi last year where, the other brand's title. So I don't mind that pay-per-view there if it's all geared towards building to WrestleMania, right? Like you think this year it's like, all right, well, we're going to find out who, Bray or Goldberg is going against. And we're going to find out who, the SmackDown Women's Champion is going to go against. And maybe, there's something with Orton where Edge comes. So there's a lot you can do. And you're like, man, I'm pretty damn pumped for WrestleMania and the week, after to find out on Raw and SmackDown what that card's going to be. So,
and I wonder too, is like, maybe it's, and crowd. Now the crowd has turned on Rocky already at this point a little bit. I see some thumbs down, things like that, and so
just crazy how it happened. Like it's not like he was cheating or trying to be the heel, right?
Right. And so, fans
like Hogan's trying to work as the heel in this match.
I'll say too, we haven't said a lot. Like we've talked about, like there's been a lot of good action. They really haven't stopped yet.
You segued this perfectly because I have something I came across in my research, and then I have a comment, and I want to see what you think. So Keller was saying, he's like, look, there's low expectations in terms of athleticism, but fans will probably be excited to see the two icons. So he was predicting, hey, this probably isn't going to be much of a match. Now, let me throw this out there. Hulk Hogan is a significantly underrated in-ring performer. Try that on for size. What do you think when I say that?
I think that at this point, I think he's definitely beyond his prime at this point. I do think it does say a lot in regards to he does put on a match with one of the best that's out there, The Rock. And so, he's talking about like certain guys like AJ Styles always putting on, like he can get in the ring with anybody. I will agree with you. I think Hulk can get in the ring with anybody, and he can put on a good match with that person. We didn't, we wouldn't have talked about that a lot necessarily in this time because of the backstage politics and all the rumors and stuff we'd hear. But I think that to your point, I will say that I think he could get in the ring with anybody. Maybe even nowadays, I'm not sure. I hope. I know
you want to make Tom Healy a very happy Hulk Hogan fan. Let me tell you something. Put him in a match at Mania. I will go nuts.
So they've been slowly introducing him back after his.
Our seats are going to be really good if Hulk Hogan's wrestling match. Right. I will tell you that.
So I think that yeah.
So you agree with me that Hogan's he's a much better in-ring performer than people talk about. I'm not saying he's AJ Styles. Okay, but think about this. This is 2002. Oh, a little choke slam there. I've never seen him do that. That's a great move. So this is 2002 against The Rock. He has a really good match, right? Okay, WrestleMania 19, he has that really good street fight against Vince McMahon. He had a really good match against Randy Orton. He had a good match against Shawn Michaels, even though Michaels was kind of flip-flopping, but it was still a really good match. So I just named 4 matches during this kind of last run, if you will, that were pretty damn good. And I know I'm leaving out others, obviously, but some really good matches.
So to put this in perspective, too, as of today, Hulk Hogan's 66. That Hulk Hogan in this match would have been about 46, 47 years old.
Okay.
Today, The Rock is 47 years old.
Jesus.
And so, the Hulk was as old as
Rock's
The
47?
Rock. Yeah, he's 47.
Are you positive?
Yeah, he's 47 years old.
Holy shit.
He was born in 1972. And so,
oh my God.
But
I need to start doing steroids.
Seriously, we need to hit the gym a little bit more. And so, that's one of those, so to put that's crazy to put in perspective that, how they're working and how their ages were. Because dealing with that, that's insane when you think about it.
So, all right, sticking on this, Hogan is an in-ring performer. Let me ask you the next question. Who, in their prime or however you want to, and throughout their career, however you want to look at it, who is the better in-ring performer? Hulk Hogan or John Cena?
I think Cena. I think that they have had very similar career trajectories, and so we're talking purely in ring.
Yes,
I think Cena.
So my argument for Hogan is I just think his timing is so much better. I think his psychology is so much better. I mean, there's some great Cena matches throughout his career, but there's so many duds. And I say duds of the crowd kind of shit on it. It wasn't that great. I mean, even a bad Hulk Hogan match. I mean, go back and watch WrestleMania 7 against Sergeant Slaughter. The people were going nuts.
Yeah. I think that just Cena, I don't know, maybe it's because I like Cena a little bit more. It's when I was watching a lot more wrestling growing up that I'm a bigger fan of Cena. I think that, of course, you and I could hear him call his matches from anywhere.
Rough bump.
Kyoto shouldn't have been there.
Right, he was poor position.
They're always
this was early in Mark Kyoto's career.
Yep. So I think that this is one of the. He is out too.
Out cold.
He's dead.
Why don't they ever send a referee down to check on the referee?
They do it other times, and so
he could be seriously hurt right now.
Yep. No one can throw the X. Yeah. At Rock too, you got to run that line better. So. I think that, I got to stick with Cena on this one. I think it's a good conversation to have, and like, it's what Twitter let us know, because I think that's a good one of like, or who is there somebody else like the longevity of like who's had a career like that has just survived the test of time.
So to close a loop on a couple earlier conversations, should this have been the main event?
I think like
2020 hindsight.
Yeah, especially when you're billing it as icon versus icon.
Yeah, and
like
you just say this is bigger than championships or something.
But I get, like we said, I get why the title went last, but in this one, it shouldn't have. So
here's a random question for you. You might follow UFC a little bit closer than I do. Do they always put the title on last, or do they just put the biggest attraction on, and sometimes it's title, sometimes it's not?
I think it's more the biggest attraction and usually it's for a title. We got Hogan tapping out now, the ref not seeing it. Yep. And so
do you think we'll ever get instant replay? Like the match would have been over right here.
I highly doubt it.
Me too.
We couldn't. There's no way. So yeah, normally, and a lot of times because you got like McGregor with the double titles and all that stuff, and so The Rock trying to kick Mike Chioda awake here. Oh, just dragging him. Wow. He's doing a good job of ragdolling, though.
All right, so my next question.
Yeah.
Should this have been Austin Rock?
After the previous year, no. Oh, there's the low blow, and the fans losing their mind here. So getting us into the final act.
Hogan hitting the rock bottom.
Yeah, hitting the rock bottom.
Actually a pretty damn good one, too. It was mostly Rock selling it, but...
And the crowd...
Look at this. 1, 2...
Oh...
They wanted him to win
count,
right
that
there.
close count, yeah.
And remember, this is in the era before, kickouts were so prevalent too.
Yep, we've taken the belt off. Here we go.
So I mean, are you happy this was Rock Austin, or do you wish? Or, I'm sorry, Rock Hogan, or do you wish it was Austin?
Yeah, because we got a Rock Austin like the previous Mania.
No. That's not what I'm asking. Do you wish it was Hogan Austin?
No, I think it would have been a fine. I think this was the story. This was a good story. Like, I enjoy this. I get how it could have been, but this worked for me. I'm fine with this.
Okay, so I know it's terrible to say. I still wish it would have been Austin Hogan just to see it the one time.
Just to have it.
It might have sucked, right? It probably would have sucked. So this was probably better that we got this, but it would have been awesome to see. But that being said, here's the thing. If I'm going to see that match, I want red and yellow Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wish I would have saw it, 6 months or a year later. Of course, a year later, I mean, isn't this crazy? This was a year before Austin retired. It was his final match.
Yeah. So Rock now. We're getting into the final here. Kyoto's still down, still recovering, and so makes sense after taking the bump.
I'm starting to think he's faking it.
You never know. And so The Rock, hitting him with the belt now, and so good stuff. Yeah. And the fans still losing their mind, but Hogan getting up, though, this is where it starts to happen. So what are the thoughts you got? I know you got a couple other notes.
Yeah, so rock bottom. Is this it? Is this it?
This will not be it. Yeah.
Would you let me enjoy the damn match? I knew it wasn't it.
I know.
Hulking up. They are going batshit crazy in the Skydome. They are going nuts.
We're turning it up, whether we can hear it or not. We don't always do this, but...
So he's hitting him with the punches. Place going nuts. I mean, this is one of the loudest... you'll get this kind of noise in an arena, but for a stadium show, boom, leg drop. And that's why he's had 20 back surgeries. 1, 2... And JR, classic JR, incredible JR.
You just don't get reactions like that anymore. It's just one of the, so tough to hear it. Oh, yeah. And we know, the miking the crowd and muting the crowd and doing all this other stuff and piping sound in at certain times.
So you know what this match to me is Exhibit A for? Why we need to let the fans drive the product more. Hogan missed the leg drop. Ironically, and I'm not saying he hasn't done it other times in his career, but one of the only other missed leg drops I can ever remember is against the Warrior at WrestleMania 6 in this same building. Rock bottom. So you know how he's grabbing his ribs during the match? He actually hurt them prior to that.
That's what.
I found that out in my research.
I had read that too. Yeah,
and I don't know if he heard it against Rikishi or he tried to wrestle against Rikishi on a house show in Tampa with it. So,
and this is one of those and you got to think they're about 15, maybe 16 minutes in at this point. And
so boom, rock bottom.
Second rock bottom.
Hogan could barely even jump up there.
A crowd not happy. Rock
hip up.
Though.
I think he can still do that. Okay, here. I actually forgot about this. So here we go. Here comes the people's elbow.
Yep, hit it. But then...
Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And mark my words on this, okay? And I want everyone to hear me loud and clear when I say this. I fucking hate when The Rock ends matches with a elbow.
Yeah.
It's so fucking fake. I hate it. I hate it. You have this great match. You have all this build. He hits the rock bottom. End the damn match. It just looks stupid. I'm almost positive. I'm like 99% sure that's how he beat CM Punk for the title. I hate that. Why do you end the match with that?
He did give him the 2 rock bottoms.
And I get it, and it works here, but I hated it in that Punk match. You're posing to the crowd. It just, again, if you want to present this like sport and athleticism, if you want to do that as a setup or do it during the match, that's fine. But to do it at the end, I absolutely hate it. But what I was saying is what's about to happen here with, kind of turning the rock on the fans a little bit and people going nuts for Hogan, it reminds me of like Daniel Bryan becoming like a major player a few years back around, leading up to WrestleMania 30. Let these damn fans control the product more. Instead of trying to jam Roman Reigns down as some scripted good guy, white meat babyface, if they boo him, let him be a bad guy.
Yep.
And
that's where they're at. And so I think the fans were a little deflated, coming right. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's just one of those. The finishing move is the finishing move. I think it was always the rock bottom for him. He didn't always finish a match with the elbow, or the people's elbow, but it was one of those where, the rock bottom's a good finishing move, but it just didn't always use it. And sometimes, like you said, he does the people's elbow or, gets the cover that way. So some finishers, I don't know why they're so protected. Like Baron Corbin has had been protected forever. Hogan extending match over now. Hogan extending his hand to the Rock, talking to him as well too, trying to get it. And then the Rock, of course, shaking hand. Hogan just dripping sweat, and so. We talked too a lot about people going out on their back. Do you think this was a good going out or kind of passing torch? Was this a good example of how it should be done to you?
Yeah. Again, I know the old school mentality is every guy should lose their final match. Kurt Angle should have won against Baron Corbin. I don't care who the Undertaker wrestles last. He should win. Now, Shawn Michaels losing to Taker, I thought that was fine too. So I'm not saying that the guy leaving should always win, but I'm just saying that, I think it's a case-by-case situation, not a rule that, hey, you should always be on your back the final time.
Here come Hall and Nash now in the ring.
So I have no idea about this, Jeff. I don't know if you do either, and I'm sure someone on Twitter can tell us. Was this always the plan for them to attack him after the match, or did they call an audible here because of it? I don't know.
You could just see the Rock in the background there watching what's happening.
This feels like it might have been an audible, and I'm not trying to sound like some mark of they really attacked him, but I just wonder if this was planned ahead of time. Did they know he was going to get this big of a reaction?
I read both. That it was.
I feel like I have too. That's why I'm asking you.
And so maybe people smarter than us can let us know and kind of know exactly how it happened. I think that me personally sitting here right now with you, I think that it was not planned. I think that they did make a little bit of an audible on the fly here, because it does kind of open the door for them. They have some different options. Even if you do have them attack him, you can really do whatever. And
again, I don't think going into this show, the plan was, hey, we're going to, turn Hogan, and then, the following week on SmackDown, have him come out in red and yellow and be world champ in 30 days. Yeah. I don't think that was the original plan. So that's why I'm like, I don't know what was and wasn't. And again, I think I've read both sides of it, so who the hell knows? But, just kind of curious of that. I didn't know if you knew that either.
It does speak to us getting worked, years later, still not knowing what happened. Like, that's the kind of storytelling you want. Like, that's how it should be. And so, but yeah, this is one of those examples where that's just how it is.
So a lot more to talk about, but let's right now transition into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
So, initial thoughts, Jeff. Was this the best Rock match ever? And what are some of the other ones that are in the conversation?
I think that this was definitely one that you have to... I don't know if it was the best, but I think you do have to put it at the top. Kind of looking at a list of just some kind of different ones. I do kind of agree that I think that the Mania 17 previous to this one, like the... against Steve Austin match, I think that it's hard to not, being a no DQ match too. It's hard to not enjoy that one and kind of, see how it is.
Sure.
Looking at this, a couple other ones on this one here, you've got the Judgment Day versus Triple H. That was the Iron Man match. Kind of looking back at that one too. Versus Chris Jericho for the WCW championship. That was an odd one that I had forgotten about as well too. And then you had there was the ladder match.
That was a very good match. That was
SummerSlam 1998. And so it was a slower pace, but then it really picked up. And so
the list you're looking at, where is that?
This one I actually just got to. So this list it's a list of 20 of the best Rock matches, and this one is number 8. Man. And so it says their star power alone puts this in classic territory.
So again, it just depends on what your criteria is and what you think. I mean, if you watched it on mute and couldn't see the fans and, we're looking at like two guys wrestling a match, yeah, I guess so. I look at things, and I know we do here on the Payoff, and that's where our payoff score comes in. We look at the historical nature of the match. We look at the crowd reaction. We look at, just kind of our own personal enjoyment. We talk about the, build to the match and the aftermath. So I think we take a much more holistic approach than, two guys in Speedos doing moves at each other for 15 minutes. What did we think of it? How high flying was it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I like what we do a lot more. And I mean, there weren't the matches you rattled off. There weren't 7 matches in Rock's career better than this. There might have been a few. WrestleMania 17 certainly comes to mind, but there weren't. There's no way there were 7. I can tell you that.
And you can, of course, on Twitter, let us know what you think are what was the best Rock match. Like, kind of where do you get that? And so. So now that they spent some time kind of celebrating in the ring, kind of Hulk doing his thing as he does, kind of getting him pumped up, and of course both men leaving together after that point, and so really good stuff at that, and so something to think about, like kind of there's the quick immediate aftermath of this one. Of course, you had Hulk turning into and pointing to a Rockamania sign. Now that's a good stuff, and so. We've got it just kind of playing in the background when we're kind of sitting here talking. But it was after this, The Rock actually left to go film a movie. This was, for those of you that enjoy The Rock's film career, this was post Scorpion King, which was panned widely. I think Walking Tall was the movie, this one with Johnny Knoxville, that he left to go film after this one. And so it's just very interesting to kind of see how that played out. And so kind of one note here that I thought was interesting and just kind of played out that following his victory over Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18, The Rock started to see a dip in fan support, and that dip turned into a plunge by the time The Rock had his match with Lesnar at SummerSlam, because fans knew he was leaving WWE to pursue an acting career. this was evident by the fact that there was negative crowd response during the match against Lesnar, which that's a different conversation for a different day, but that was a interesting match too. And so kind of dealing with that, and so they knew that, but Hulk actually feuded with Triple H, and as Tom had kind of alluded to a little bit, he actually beat Triple H for the undisputed WWE Championship. And so kind of playing that out. And so one little kind of interesting note here that Hulk was actually the last ever WWF champion before the initials, like the letters.
Yeah, this was right before the brand split.
And so they had to do it a little. He did that, and so and then he left, but of course we can't forget his brief stint as Mr. America, and so he had that as well too. But we will definitely chat about that another time. And so since then, though, of course, Hulk, it just in and out of the ring. We know the career that he's had, a Hall of Famer, all that different stuff. And so, Tom, what other thoughts you got on the aftermath?
Yeah, I just got some random notes as I was doing my research that I thought were kind of fun to discuss. You could argue the best two matches of Hogan's career, and again, I know it's a big list to choose from, but you could argue that if you thought his match against Warrior and his match against The Rock were his two best, they took place in the same building. Kind of interesting. Leading up to this show, there was talk of maybe incorporating Shawn Michaels, and it was, hey, no one's, and this is Keller talking, nobody's going to bat for him anytime soon, not expected back for WrestleMania. The ratings have been fine without him. The management thinks so little of Michaels. Friends of him say he'd be shocked if he ever agreed to wrestle again. All this stuff, right? A year later, WrestleMania 19, he steals the show with Chris Jericho, and it starts this 7-year run of, killer main events and great WrestleMania and other matches. So I just thought that was kind of fun. Also, in my research, they were saying that the XFL will haunt Vince McMahon forever because they covered it in The Simpsons after it had gone out of business. So thought that was kind of fun.
Predicting the future there.
A young cat by the name of Randy Orton was training in OVW. Okay. Behind the scenes, Hogan was well received. Here's another one. Guess who had recently gotten a tryout here in 2002? AJ Styles.
In the WWE?
Yes.
Interesting.
And they didn't sign him, but this was right around the time that Jeff Jarrett was getting ready to launch TNA Wrestling.
That's right, yep.
Okay? And so that was also being discussed. It was great to see Hogan back because, remember, this wasn't long after that period of time where he was really getting jerked around pretty bad by WCW. And they kind of screwed him in that one match against Jarrett, and they had him come back in the red and yellow, but didn't do much with him, and it was just kind of disappointing. So it was great for him to kind of come back home and have a great match. So let's round this out by talking about our payoff scores. And what's interesting is there is no hard and fast rule of like, hey, a certain match is 3 stars or 4 stars. It's all based on our opinion. And anyone that tells you differently is completely full of shit. And I was just thinking about this week, Jeff. Do you know who buys the most wine of anyone in the world? Who actually makes decisions on the most dollar amount of wine in any given year? Do you know who that person is?
Who do you got?
It's the wine buyer for Costco.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if she still is the one doing it, but I watched a documentary not that long ago. And the woman who was buying wine for Costco, so determining, what wine they were going to put in their stores, a massively important person, buying like probably hundreds of millions of dollars worth of wine, okay? It was the former head of their toy department. And you'd say, well, why would someone that's not an expert in wine be making those big decisions? And it was simple, because she's the type of person that would buy the wine. I share this story with you, Jeff, because we have our payoff score.
Yeah.
Is our opinion any lesser than that of Dave Meltzer? No. Is it any better? No. We're fans with opinions. We know what we like. We know what we don't like. We have our criteria for figuring it out. So don't feel like someone saying that something is a 5-star match is a fact or is gospel, or if your favorite wrestling writers on Twitter like or don't like or shit on something. Like, have your own opinion. And sometimes it's healthy to watch these shows or watch matches or go back and watch matches and do it without Twitter being open or without knowing what the stars of the matches are. Just going, man, I thought that was awesome. And then, it getting 2 stars. Well, yeah, fuck that guy. I don't agree with him, versus being like, oh, no, it must have been a bad match because someone said that. So with that being said, I love how we do it here. We give our payoff score, which is here's what we thought of the build, the payoff, the aftermath, the crowd, the match in the ring, everything else happening, how it stands up in history. There's all that stuff happening. So talk about what some of the opinions were from the quote-unquote experts, and then I want you to give your payoff score, and I'm going to give my payoff score.
Yeah, and so this one, I'll start with the Observer newsletter. They gave it 3 stars, actually, but it was also the best match of the night, according to their poll, by a landslide here. The kind of interesting piece of the write-up here that I thought was that Hogan versus Rock will probably go down like Hogan versus Warrior in the same building 12 years ago. It was an epic battle, and in the end, Hogan lost, passed the torch, and the guy he passed it to was all the worse for it. Warrior's drawing power declined after beating Hogan. Rock was left in a quandary as fans actually wanted to boo him, and he had to tease a heel turn the next night and go back just to ensure a babyface reaction. The other similarity in both matches is that they must have been great live, but when you watch them on tape, they are something else. I remember Hogan versus Warrior was tremendous live, but 2 years later, before one of Warrior's comebacks, they aired the match on WWF television, and their reaction was that it was a terrible match.
Was that Meltzer?
Yeah.
He is such a negative, sour hack.
I agree.
Come on.
Well, hang on. I agree with a live match versus, watching on television.
We just watched it on television. They were going nuts.
Right.
It was great.
And you and I sit, yeah.
It's always better in person. I would have liked the match more if I was 3 rows back and I didn't know who was going to win.
Right. If we were sitting first row, we would have had a good time,
I'd probably enjoy the Super Bowl. When the Steelers beat the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, I had a great time. I would have had more fun if I was down by the end zone where Holmes caught the winning touchdown pass. What a jackass.
So that always makes sense.
So what do you give it star-wise?
3.
3 stars?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and so that one, well, there are a couple different ones. That was 3 or 4. I can't, there was different things.
And so the fans aren't allowed to cheer the bad guy?
No, of course not. So,
give me a break.
So I think the one thing, a different kind of it's
so and Rock's drawing power is going to be hurt because of this.
That's what they said.
So the biggest movie star in Hollywood that could sell out any arena in or stadium if he wrestles another match. Yeah, he was hurt by this booing and cheering. So, give me a fucking break.
The piece here that they're the quote my
what an asshole,
and then I'll get into my score here was. The whole nature of passing the torch when using that specific term makes the older guy into the sentimental star and buries the younger guy.
The torch, see, this passing of the torch, The Rock was already a megastar. He headlined WrestleMania 15, WrestleMania 16, WrestleMania 17, and he was in the best, most memorable match for now his 4th year in a row. What torch was there to pass? Oh, and the guy was already making movies in Hollywood at this point.
Right. And so I found that quote and I brought that, and that was just, I forget where I found that one, but I thought it was interesting. And so.
Yeah, this was an attraction match. This was your, Batista Triple H match. There's no pass. Oh, yeah, Triple H got the torch passed to him. Give me a break.
And so I think that reading that quote and the point I want to make with that is that I don't agree with that. I think that, like you said,
you better not, or this show's over.
I think
it is.
I think you called it a good thing. Like it was an attraction match. Which is how it should have been. You get so much of that at WrestleMania. It's about, it was the WrestleMania moment. That's what it was.
Okay, so if you're going, let me just say this. If you're going with this whole thing of passing the torch, let's say Hogan would have won. Does it matter to The Rock? I mean, is The Rock less of a star or less of a draw because of it?
Right.
I'd say no, it doesn't matter. Now, if it was some young kid or something, yeah, maybe it hurts him. But guess what? Did Hogan beat Randy Orton at SummerSlam? Did it hurt his longtime drawing power?
Right.
Like, give me a break, dude.
Yeah. So, I'm going to give this one an 8, I think, or 8.5, excuse me. I think that between the crowd reaction alone kind of dictating the pace of this, I think too, us not truly knowing, even, someone does, and someone will probably tell us, but us not truly knowing kind of, what
the plan was. Sure.
What the plan was, I think there's a lot to say about that. And so, and I mean, overall, it's just, you really do. You have two absolute legends of the squared circle. And so, I'm going to go with an 8.5. What do you have?
Okay, so you and I never discussed this prior, so I never have an idea what you're going to say, but I always pick my number before you talk. I kid you not, I have this at an 8.5.
Yeah.
The pros of this being the crowd goes batshit crazy. It's Hogan coming home for his first WrestleMania match since WrestleMania 9. Okay, so you're talking about a massive gap there. It got him like kind of to transition into a baby face. The match was really good. There were some great close finishes, close falls at a time where that didn't happen all the time. So for that, I loved it. What prevents it from being a 10? Gosh, maybe the match could have been a little bit better. Hogan not getting hurt. Maybe if we saw him in the red and yellow, like at his prime or his peak. Okay, so I mean, there's some things that maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe if a title was involved or something, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't the perfect, WrestleMania match, but it was really damn close. As far as the build was good. I mean, it wasn't like the most memorable, greatest thing in the world, but it was pretty good. The fallout from this, they did end up having a rematch. Hogan goes on to win the title. He has a nice little run there. Liked it, didn't love that part. So again, 8.5, not perfect, not the greatest thing to ever happen in the history of the business, but really, really, really good. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with it.
It's a couple of 8.5s, not too bad. So that's good stuff. So
close us out, dude.
Yeah. So of course, you and I enjoyed sitting here doing this, kind of having watching this one.
Fun one.
It was just a fun one, absolutely. And so let us know your thoughts, of course, to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. But our two competitors here, of course, you can find them both very active on social media. And so on Twitter, you got at Hulk Hogan and at The Rock. So plain and simple, make sure to kind of find both of them. Check that out.
And I did get a retweet from Hogan once.
Yeah, it was a big moment for you.
Bachelor party. I had 20 guys in Heliumania tank tops with the Hogan red with the yellow backdrop. It was fantastic.
Hogan's still tweeting
immediately. Yep. I mean, it was great. So I don't even post much on Twitter, but I posted that and sorry Hulk, but Heliumania is running wild in Vegas today. Put my phone away, put on airplane mode, I think, because we were at like a pool in Vegas. A couple minutes goes by, and a buddy of mine's like, holy shit, you're not going to believe this. Hulk Hogan retweeted you. I'm like, best day ever. I was like, this is the greatest day ever.
Right. Makes for a good day.
So once a Hulkamaniac, always a Hulkamaniac. I don't care how old I am.
So, of course, as we always say, subscribe to The Payoff wherever you listen. Give us those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Good reviews.
Check out the archives.
And spread the word about the show by listening, going back, checking out the archives. A lot of anniversaries are some of these matches that we've been discussing. And so we will be kind of, sending some messages out, reminding people of some of those original because, like Tom said, 28 episodes later, we're still going strong and we're going to keep bringing you good stuff. So, of course, you can always find us on all those different places where you can listen to the podcast and then at Payoff Pod on social media. So Tom, with that, how do you want to take us home here? Let's wrap this up.
What you gonna do when the payoff runs wild on you, brother?